to the Israel Insider Weekly Podcast, where we talk about the news in Israel with Ron Cantor, president of Shalanu TV and Israel Regional Director for God TV. I'm Lisa Hutchison. Thanks for joining us today. Well, Ron, let's do something different in this podcast. Let's start with some good news.
Okay.
I see in the news, and you wrote about it this week for our listeners and those who get the daily email from Israel Insider, but you wrote about the wonderful news in Israel, the end of the Green Pass.
Yeah.
So why don't you share a little bit with the listeners what that means for Israel?
Yeah, that's a really big deal, particularly for those who were scared that this was the beginning of some sort of
the end,
the beginning of the end, or a police state, or we'll get into some of the absurd things that were said in just a minute. But basically, on June 1st, Israel is going to pull back all restrictions internally. This does not connected to people coming into Israel, but basically in our society, the mask mandates, and there'll be some. They're still encouraging social distancing, but even that, and mask wearing if you're close to each other inside. But even that, they said within a week, so by June 8th, those could be done with completely. But the Green Pass is going to be ending on June 1st, and just to be let our listeners know, the Green Pass. It basically was instituted, I'm going to say about 2.5 months ago, as the vaccine began to be widely received in Israel. So for those who had received the vaccine, in order to go to a restaurant, in order to go to different social events, you would have to show your Green Pass to say, I've been vaccinated, and then they would let you in. Now, this seemed very, none of this is comfortable, let's be real clear, but it is common sense. The whole point of getting a vaccine in the midst of a pandemic is so you can continue in life. And we know how contagious the COVID-19 virus is. We were up to 12,000 a day. That would be like about 400,000 a day in America.
Wow.
It was just crazy and out of control. This is in January, and that's right when they started administering the vaccine. And so now we are, let's think, we're 5 months from that tipping point, if you will, or that high mark. And we're down to like 25 cases a day, which is pretty much means it's gone. Now, it doesn't mean it's gone forever, and God only knows what will be in the future. But for right now, the virus is pretty much gone in Israel. People are, even though they're going to roll back the restrictions in a week, I mean, it's really, since I've been back here for the past few weeks, people have been going about life as if there is no virus. It's just not like it was when, say, back in September, October, and then when they had even more shutdowns, December, January. So it's exciting. I shared that online, and I was just news. I thought people would be excited, but it got shared and liked, like hundreds of times. So people around the world are watching Israel. But one of the things that was really troubling, Lisa, was in the midst of this, the amount of evangelical pro-Israel people who turned against Israel because of the Green Pass. I heard a very well-known pastor and his wife, and they had another pastor, very successful pastor, on the line. They were doing a prayer call. By the way, why is it we have these prayer calls and the last thing that we do is pray? They talk for an hour.
Good question.
They talked, I mean, honestly, they talked for an hour, and then they prayed for about a minute and a half. And one of the things that they talked about, and this is why it'd probably be better to pray more and talk less, and I'm one to talk, but they talked about Israel being like Nazis. And I have two rules when it comes to the word Nazi. Number one, don't ever call a Jew a Nazi. That's just wrong. And don't ever use the term Nazi to describe anything other than Nazis. Yeah. In other words, if your stewardess is mean to you, don't say she's the Gestapo, because that is just disrespectful to 6 million people who were murdered by actual real Nazis. But they were saying, no, Israel has broken they were panicked. They were panicked. And I saw a lot of people on Facebook agreeing with this sentiment that Israel was basically becoming Nazi-like, and that this Green Pass was proof of it. This pastor said to me, because I confronted him. I mean, I talked to him. I got his phone number or rather his email address, and we did had a little bit of communication before he stopped communicating with me. But he said he was done with Netanyahu, and I'm, I folks know my feelings about Benjamin Netanyahu, but he was done with him, not over any of the scandals he's been involved in, not over the fact that he's under indictment and could easily go to jail within the next year, not for the fact that he's fractured the Likud party and half of the politicians on the right wing won't even work with him, or for the fact that he embraced racist politicians just in order to prop up his government a few years ago, leading, I believe, to some of the racist acts that we've seen both from Arabs and Jews over the past few weeks. No, he was done with Bibi because of what I think is one of the most responsible things he did, which was to get rid of this virus. We are the only nation in the world, I think, that is COVID-free. And and listen, you can be against vaccines, and that's fine. I respect that. I honor that. You got to follow your conscience. The Bible doesn't give us, this is what you do when people want to give you a vaccine. We don't know. So you have to pray. You got to hear from the Holy Spirit, and you got to follow your conscience. And so I respect people who didn't get it. It's okay. But looking back, it worked. We don't have COVID anymore. Now, could there be long-term effects? Yes, there could be. But unlike a lot of folks, I do trust the medical community. I don't think they're trying to kill me. I think people are staying alive longer today than in the past, several thousand years because of medicine. So, in the time of Paul, I was just studying this week about Paul, how old he was when he was in jail. He was double the normal life expectancy, which was like 35 years old.
Wow.
And now we're talking 80 years old. So medicine kind of works, it seems. And so, but again, even if you've got problems with the vaccine and you're just uncomfortable taking it, it did work here. And so to call Israel and really our entire government Nazi-like, saying that we violated the Nuremberg Code, that was just over the top ridiculous. And it bordered on anti-Semitism.
I
And
was
I
just
know
thinking that that it really, like, it's this fine line, of I think it's just so important that when you're talking about the use of the word Nazi,
yeah,
it's such a danger in society right now that we really have to watch how we use our words and what they mean, because you dilute the true potency of the
yeah.
word Nazi by throwing it around casually, and then to end up flipping it onto onto
The
Jewish
victims,
people, the
right.
victims of it. It's like, how is that not really just, if it's not anti-Semitism, it sure is bordering on it, and we really need to examine
Yeah, and I
ourselves
don't
about
think,
that.
Lisa, at least I don't think these people are anti-Semitic. I think they love Israel, but they feed anti-Semitism when they
Right.
express these sentiments. Now, regarding the Nuremberg Code, let's just talk about what that was. That was instituted in the late 1940s to prevent human experiments of medicine. Now, that sounds like, oh, yeah, vaccines. No, that's not what it was about. It was because Joseph Mengele, who was a Nazi working for Hitler, did the most horrific experiments on Jews in the name of medicine, like taking a Jew and then freezing him and then studying the effects of being frozen. That's what they were
Mm,
trying to prevent.
mm,
Now, what Israel did with the vaccine, the goal was to save lives. So it's not like Adolf Hitler participated in these experiments. Of course he didn't, but everyone in our government participated in the vaccine. I think every single one of our Knesset members have been vaccinated. It wasn't, listen, we have the most contentious government in the world. We are getting ready to go through our 5th election, it looks like. And there is so much division and strife in our government right now. And yet everybody agreed on the vaccine. I've not read one article from one Knesset member that was against the vaccine. So to have believers in America who don't even know what's going on here because they heard something on YouTube. I mean, really, this pastor actually sent me the YouTube video that him and his wife had based their conclusion, and it was just a joke. I couldn't believe that these are, this fellow has his PhD. I'm like, really? So, wow. But on the ground here, the goal was to save lives, not to experiment for the sake of studying, one of the other things they did is they exposed Jews to mustard gas. No, the goal of this was to save lives. And you know what, Lisa? It has, because we don't have any more coronavirus here in Israel.
There you go. It's the proof is right there in front of you, in front of the nation, and in front of the world, to see how it's working. And for sure, no one knows the long-term effect. And I think about all this too. Just two quick points is one of the big differences, I think, between what happened in Nazi Germany and all this debate over the vaccine is that while we don't know exactly what all the long-term effects may be, it was not mandatory in Israel. Everybody wanted the vaccine who got the vaccine. It's like, and the same here in the States. And I just think
let me just jump on that comment, because that is true. People were acting as if it was being forced. I had somebody tell me that they were considering going house to house, forcing people to take the vaccine. I asked this person, I said, can you show me some proof of that? And they showed me one remark by one politician who is a bit of a wacko, who suggested it. Other than that, no, this never happened. It was never mandatory. The politician said it's, Uli Edelstein, he said this is not mandatory. Now, there was strong encouragement, and 80% of Israelis did get it, and it wasn't an easy thing. I mean, people couldn't go to work depending on where you work. There's some jobs that you could not go to work without the vaccine because they didn't want to spread the virus. I mean, that's, for me, it was common sense, but it's hard. It's difficult. And there's probably people who did get it that didn't want to get it because they didn't want to lose their jobs. But I said back then, and it wasn't prophetic, it was just common sense. I said, well, if the vaccine works, 80% of adults got the vaccine. If it works, then they're going to roll back all these restrictions. I said within 6 months. Turns out it was within 2.5 months. Yeah. I said they're going to roll them back because the danger will be past. They're not doing this just to control people. That was the thing. They want to control us. This is part of the New World Order, and Bibi is now part of the Illuminati. I said, or they're trying to do whatever they can to get rid of the virus. It's either the Illuminati, the Antichrist, the end of the world, or they're trying to save lives. It ended up being that they were trying to save lives.
Yeah, I think it was in one of the articles you wrote, maybe a month and a half ago. I'm forgetting the gentleman who had written an editorial in Israel, and you had interviewed him basically, and that he was just saying he was actually
Avner Bosky. Yes,
there we go. He was quoting Charles Krauthammer, who said, in cases like this, it can, often when people are in government are just trying to figure out what to do in a situation that they've never faced before. It's either, it could be something nefarious, but more than likely it's just possibly incompetence or ignorance.
I think what he said, if you had to choose between conspiracy or incompetence, it's normally incompetence.
There you go. Exactly.
And so
exactly.
So I was willing to give our government the benefit of the doubt rather than assume they were part of this Illuminati.
And I think in all of this, I just always want to stay focused, and I encourage everyone, that we stay focused on having a love for the truth. That's what Paul encouraged, and
Yes.
Yeshua is the truth. So just to embrace the truth. Don't be caught up in fear. Don't be caught up in lies. Embrace the truth. Search out the truth.
Yeah.
And
And one of the things I have said all along, Lisa, is as believers, we're not at home in this world. This is not our ultimate destination. Our citizenship is in heaven, in the age to come, the messianic age. So we're here as sojourners. We're pilgrims visiting. And while we're here, our job is to bring as many people as we can into that heavenly experience.
mhm,
So I don't understand panicking over things like this, because if God is real, and I'm convinced he's real, if he's real, then he's not panicking. So
mhm.
neither would God. Is not panicking over the Antichrist. He's not going, "Oh no, I didn't see this coming." No, actually, he wrote about it. We
That's right.
we have prophecy. So if you're listening and you've been panicking over their controlling their, yeah, well, you know what? They do that in China right now. Dictatorship, controlling communism, and yet the gospel is flourishing. And did you know that the gospel flourished initially under a harsh, oppressive Roman regime? This small group of Jews in from the Galilee in Jerusalem birthed this thing in the midst of religious persecution and political persecution. And you never see the apostles panicking. You never see the apostles going, "Oh no, Rome, what are we going to do? Oh no, the religious leaders." No, they just keep preaching Yeshua. And that's what we
That's
need.
right. That's right. That's right. I love that. That's awesome. That is definitely our goal. And with that, you and your wife Alana, I
Mhm.
understand, had opportunity to go just be the hands and feet of Yeshua to the people of Ashkelon, the eighth largest city in Israel. Now that the ceasefire appears to be holding, there's still the aftermath. And you want to share a little bit about what endeavors are there in Ashkelon?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, we didn't go there to be the hands and feet. We're going there with all of our listeners, all of our
Hmm.
viewers, everybody on Facebook that follows us. We're doing this together. But it started when, in the midst of the war, when we realized that Ashkelon, my wife and I saw this article of a bunch of Ethiopian children that the headline said something like that they forgot about us,
Mm,
and it seemed to say they were in a bomb shelter for like a week, which wasn't the case. It was more they were in and out of the bomb shelter and they didn't know what was going on, and it was really horrifying. When people say Israel has the Iron Dome, so they didn't suffer during the war. These are people who've never run for their lives when sirens are blaring and that bombs are going off overhead. I sat outside in my brother-in-law's backyard and counted 11 Iron Dome hits in this. I
mm,
could see them. We watched them. We
wow.
videotaped it. Now you say, "Ron, what were you doing outside?" Well, because thank God for our technology. It's so good that even though those things were right overhead, within miles of me, I knew that we were safe because the siren wasn't going off in our moshav or our neighborhood. Um, and if we were at risk, the siren would have gone off and we would have gone in the safe room. So we saw that, and then I heard of a friend of mine in ministry that was raising funds for bomb shelters, and I thought, well, we've got, yeah, people we need to do that. If there's any Israeli that doesn't have access to a bomb shelter, we need to do something about that. So we went to Ashkelon this weekend. My wife and I, we went to meet with the mayor down there, and we got there. It was pretty amazing. They rolled out the red carpet for us,
Hmm.
and meaning we walked into his office. There's a big boardroom table, and there's like eight little, I don't know what you call it, but seats, and there's water and food and dates. Dates are a big thing here in Israel.
Yeah.
By the way, did you know that the honey and milk of honey is probably from dates, not bear honey trees
Oh,
with bees?
I had wondered about that actually, but that makes sense because I love whenever I've been over there, I love date syrup on
Dates,
toast. It's
dates are
awesome.
big.
So that makes yeah, the date honey, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah,
And so,
thanks.
they really treated us. I was, humbled and a little embarrassed because, we're not big shots and we're Messianic Jews. And so we sat down and we talked. And the first thing I said to, I just, I got a little distracted. There's a siren going off outside and then a baby screaming in the hallway and I couldn't figure out which was which. So I'm back. I'm good. So, uh, one of the first things I said to him, and I said, Mayor, listen, we're Messianic Jews. It says, "Zachashuv bishvili shata yodeh et zeh." It's important for me that you know that. And he said to me, I don't care if you're Muslim. He said, we need help. And so I told him about, believers all over the world wanting to help Ashkelon, wanting to stand with Ashkelon. Ashkelon, to be clear, is a city of 160,000 Israelis, and it is 10 miles from Gaza. And during this I don't know if you guys can hear the sirens
Yeah.
outside. They're pretty loud.
Yeah.
I'm sure the mic's picking them up, but I'm okay if you're worried about me. The war is over.
Yay.
And I explained to him how, there are believers all over the world that want to stand with Ashkelon, 160,000 people. It's 10 miles from Gaza. It is it took a beating during this war. 1,000 rockets were
Wow.
shot at Ashkelon. And if you think it's no big deal, Iron Dome, it's so easy to be in Israel, walk throughout the city. My mother-in-law's building has a big, massive area on the side of it. It's like a 15-story building, and you can see exactly where a rocket made a direct hit. My brother-in-law's building, when you walk in to his entrance, there's all these tiny glass windows that used to be there a week ago. They're all gone. I mean, you can see them. They've been blown out. Now, I don't know how that happened. I mean, I know it was because of a rocket. I don't know if it's from the sound of it. I don't know if it's from shrapnel. All I know is that it looks like it was in a war. So I said to him, we want to help. We want to do what we can. And he said to me, and I said, listen, we'll buy bomb shelters. Turns out they're very expensive. He said, but you know what you can do for us, Ron? He said, we have bomb shelters all over the city and they need renovating. When these kids are stuck in there, like the ones that we saw in the newspaper, they could be in there for hours. They could be in there overnight. They might have to sleep there. They might have to spend the day in these bomb shelters because what they do is they do wave after. They might send 10 and then 10 minutes later 10 more and 10 minutes later 10 more. So you don't leave. You're scared to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, there's nothing for them to do in there. He said, if you could put carpet in there, if you could paint them with nice colors, if you could put TVs, video games, if you could make it so when these kids come in there, there's something for them to do, that would mean the world to us. And I said, absolutely, we will do that. Now, here's the good news. We have a matching funds challenge from one of my best friends, Troy Brewer, and his wife, Leanna, and their church, Open Door Church in Burleson, Texas. And so we've already raised $11,000 to match
Wow.
that.
That's
And
awesome.
so the next $19,000 will be matched. People give $20, it becomes 40. If they give 100, it becomes 200. And if they want to give, all you got to do is go to Ron Can, that's RONCAN, like my name, Ron Can nope, let's try that again.
Yeah.
roncan.net/protect. That's roncan.net/protect. Everything you give is going to be doubled, and we are going to stand with our dear friends in Ashkelon.
That's wonderful. I know here in the States, we don't really have anything comparable except maybe for folks who have tornado shelters in their house. But I know from the few times I've visited Israel, I've been in a bomb shelter twice, and they're not pleasant. I mean, it's just
No.
it's a concrete room, and
Yeah.
it's often hot and sweaty in there, and just definitely nothing to do. And anyway, I think that's just
A
wonderful.
lot
If
of
we could make,
homes,
yeah, go ahead.
a lot of, sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of the homes in uh, Israel have them built in, but most of them don't. The older homes and even the newer homes, when Saddam Hussein bombed Israel back in 90 or 91, I think, um, it became the law that any new house had to have a safe room in it, a bomb shelter. We call it a ma'amad. And and every house had to be built with a ma'amad. But many of the older buildings don't, and the newer buildings, because we're not worried about mustard gas anymore or biological weapons from Iraq, but we do have the issue of rockets. And so for those who don't have them in their home, they have to, like, we lived in a structure in Tel Aviv a few years ago where this is in 2014, when we had the Souk Eitan war with uh, Hamas, we would have to run to the stairwell.
Mm.
So you're in the middle of the night, you're in your pajamas, and there are eight families on your floor, and you got to run to the so that's what you got to go through. If you're in a single, I'll give you an example. I have friends of mine, and I'm going to give you great testimony. We have friends that the mother, I'm going to say she's probably getting close to 80, and her daughter live together, and they live in a single family home in a moshav in southern Israel, about 15 miles from Gaza. They have no bomb shelter. So
Mm.
during this whole time, if the sirens went off, they had nowhere to go. And you can depending on where you live, like if you're in an apartment building and your balcony, let's say, faces to the north, you know that you're going to be safe because all the bombs come from the south. But if you're in a single family home, there's nowhere to go. So
Mm.
we contacted some friends, and within 10 days, they're going to be delivering to their property a 3-person bomb shelter. It's like a little cone, and they would just run outside, and they go in, they close the door, and they wait. And so it's not pleasant, it's not nice, but it could save their lives.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really great. That'll be a real blessing for them. I sure would like to have have that if I was over there in that area for sure. Um, well, with the war and the ceasefire, it seems that uh, another war has been
Yeah,
unleashed. This one online and in the streets in America and really around the world, but
yeah.
especially in America this past week. It's been horrifying. The anti-Semitism that has been revealed, I think, probably was there under the surface, and this has just exposed it. You wrote about this a bit in this week's articles for our listeners. Why don't you share? Will you share a little bit more about that? What you're seeing?
Yeah, this recent war, people seem to don't seem to understand that Hamas fired rockets on us. They started this war. We did not. We did not want it. Um, I don't know what they would do, and they say, "Oh, well, that's because you control Gaza. You've no. We left Gaza in 2005. We left. There's not one Jew in Gaza. They're bordered by Israel and they're bordered by Egypt. Um, and you say, yeah, but you have a blockade. No, no, we don't have a blockade. We only block things that could be used from weapons for
Mm-hmm.
weapons, but food, medicine. And by the way, our ministry, we just gave $10,000 to doctors in Gaza. Now we're working through an organization so that we know where the money is going to, that it is going to hospitals and is treating people because we care for those people. We care for the Arabs of Gaza.
Right.
Hamas, does not represent the average person on the street there. And so it's horrific what Hamas puts those people through. And there's nothing they can do about it. Hamas is like Iran's leadership. They
Mm.
rule them with an iron fist. If you're suspected of being a collaborator, you get beheaded and
Wow.
paraded, your body paraded throughout the streets. It's
Wow.
it's it's horrible. So the fact that people have sympathy for Hamas and their cause is just ridiculous. But it has to do with the lies. They're just lies being spread over the earth. But it should be no surprise, because God said in Zechariah that the whole world is going to turn against Jerusalem. And by Jerusalem, that means the Jews, Israel, Zion. Over this past week, according to the Anti-Defamation League, over 17,000 tweets had some form of the wording, Hitler was right.
Wow. Wow.
Hitler was right. Now let's let's do a refresher. Hitler killed 6 million Jews because they were Jews. And 17,000 people, Hitler was right. So that's pretty shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been beatings a rabbi was beaten in the UK. Jews have been beaten in America just for being Jews.
From New York to Los Angeles and Florida, all over.
In South Florida, a man yelled anti-Semitic remarks at a rabbi and threw a bag of human feces at the front of his synagogue, screaming, Jew should die. It's great. In Beverly Hills, 10 cars of Palestinian supporters drove up and started attacking Jewish diners. So again, we're not talking about people protesting. We believe in freedom of speech, even if it's speech I don't like. We are talking about physical, violent hate crimes.
Right.
Mobs brutally attacked one Jewish man in Times Square and another in the Diamond District of New York City. And I saw two men online that just got beaten up by a mob of Palestinian protesters. In Los Angeles, someone recorded an Orthodox Jewish man being chased by two vehicles as passengers waved Palestinian flags. And in Florida, a pro-Palestinian parade of cars featured the words, Hitler was right, and shouted obscenities and made violent threats while driving through Jewish neighborhoods. So that's pretty chilling. And again, they've said for years, Lisa, that you can be anti-Israel without being anti-Semitic. Well, these people could have fooled me, because they're not attacking Israel. They're saying things like Hitler was right, Jews should die. They're physically beating up people because they're Jewish. They're targeting people because they're rabbis. So this is blatant anti-Semitism because of what's happening here in Israel.
Wow. It's really revealing, I think, as to where things are, where people stand. And this is just exposed it. And I think that, also it was really, I don't know, with the war, I'm not exactly sure what the right word is that I want to use to describe it, but our President Joe Biden, he really just kind of, I think, stood on the sidelines, which may have been a benefit. I'm not really sure. But and afterwards, just this week, our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, he paid a visit to the region, both in Jerusalem and in the West Bank in Ramallah, and made a few announcements. I'm not sure, what impact really that had, but Ron, maybe you can give our listeners a little insight into that as well.
Yeah. So regarding President Biden and how he handled the war, the Hamas war, it could have been a lot worse. If President Trump were still president, I am sure he would have given a full-throated green light to Israel to defend itself. Again, let me remind everybody, we were attacked. Life is not perfect in Gaza. We don't live in a perfect world, and it's the Middle East turmoil here in Israel between Jews and Palestinians is not an easy issue. I don't want to pretend like it is. But again, Hamas sent deadly rockets against Israel. 12 people are dead because of those rockets. And if not for the Iron Dome, it would be 1,200. I mean, it would. I don't know how we would have survived 1,000 rockets without the Iron Dome, at which we would have had to go into all-out war with Gaza, which we would have. I can't even imagine what type of bloodshed. The Iron Dome, let me just say this. The Iron Dome saved more Arab lives than it did Jewish lives, because by saving Jewish lives, we did not have to defend ourselves as if we had an existential threat. If somebody were bombing our homes and our civilian populations and we couldn't stop it, and people were dying in the streets, in malls and buses and restaurants were being hit, we would, I don't even, I can't even, I think back to Lebanon back in 2006, where we pummeled Beirut because of the bombings of Hezbollah. We had no choice. So it would have been horrific for Gaza if we didn't. They should thank the Lord every single day that Israel has the Iron Dome. But getting back to Biden, if President Trump were president, he probably would have given us a green light to defend ourselves and been very vocal about it. In Congress now, we don't have the friends that we used to have. For the first time, we have Congress people who are clearly anti-Israel. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, what's her name from Minnesota?
The rest of the squad.
The rest of the squad, they were daily condemning Israel for the war that we didn't start because we were defending ourselves. By the way, if I'm walking down the road and somebody attacks my family, I'm going to defend them. And when I defend them, my goal is not to proportionately defend them. It's not going to say, well, you just hit my wife in the face, so I'm going to only hit you in the face. I'm going to defend them with whatever it takes to get them to stop. That's what it's not like tit for tat, because I didn't ask you to hit my wife. I am going to do what it takes to get that person to stop. So when Israel's attack and then we respond, well, it's not fair because you're so much strong. Well, thank God we're stronger. If not, they would kill us. But our goal is to get them to stop. So getting back to Biden, we've got enemies in Congress now who are blatantly, boldly anti-Israel. And it's not like it used to be. And again, this is a day that we knew would come eventually because of what the Bible says. But Joe Biden, he has caved on many issues in terms of the far left, but he didn't cave on this one. It wasn't a full-throated green light, but it could have been a condemnation, and it wasn't. They prevented the UN from condemning Israel. And so I have to say I was pleasantly surprised with Biden. But then after the conflict was over and the ceasefire came to effect, they sent Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, to Israel to do, I'm not quite sure what he was doing here other than to make it appear that they had something to do with the ceasefire. And I'm sure they did, but it was primarily Egypt who brokered the ceasefire. But quite honestly, I don't think most Americans know that he was here. And I don't think most Israelis know that he was here. It kind of came and went. I think he's in Egypt now. But they said he came here to make sure that the ceasefire stuck. Now, to be clear, I don't know how he intended to do that unless he was going to go to Gaza and talk to Hamas, because they're the only ones who can ensure that it sticks. They can either start bombing us again or not bomb us again. It's their decision. So what is he went and spent time with Prime Minister Netanyahu, where they had discussions. Netanyahu told him that it's a fatal mistake to go back into the Iran deal over Iran's nuclear program. And then he went to Ramallah to meet with Abbas. And again, Abbas is he's got no power. He is the president of the Palestinian Authority, but Hamas upstages him at every, and they're so corrupt themselves. They steal from the Palestinian people, both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. The only difference is that Hamas is, they're just more evil. They're Islamic fanatics, radicals willing to murder anybody and everybody if it's in line with their religious goals. The PLO is not quite so crazy. So, he was here, he's gone. I'm not quite sure what he got accomplished, the U.S. Secretary of State. We will see.
Time will tell. I think for anyone who would like to dive a little deeper into understanding these matters, there's some great insight in the articles this week that you can get from the Israel Insider, that where Ron talks more about, just gives us a refresher on understanding the political nature of the situation, and just a reminder that things are still tense there. There's a ceasefire, and that's wonderful, but there's still a land dispute in Jerusalem in the Sheikh Jarrah, which I know I don't pronounce that exactly right, but neighborhood,
that was
and
correct.
the Temple Mount. Okay, and the Temple Mount, and still a political battle going on between Hamas and Hezbollah and the PLO, Fatah, and those things are still in play. And so for everyone, just we want to thank you for standing with Israel.
Yeah.
Thank you for praying for Israel. And a reminder one more time, a very practical way that you can bless Israel and help Israel is to help provide for the children and others who have to be in these shelters when there is a war, and to upgrade those places. And you can visit to do that, to give, and your donation will be matched up to the $30,000 total. You can go to roncan.net/protect. That's roncan.net/protect. And that'll just be awesome. We really are looking forward to being able to bless the people of Ashkelon.
Let me just say, Lisa, that with all the craziness around the world, all the anti-Semitism, with Congress people coming against Israel, the only democracy here in the Middle East, it's so important that Christians stand with Israel, that they do something, pray, give, visit, because we're going to open up sooner or later, do something to let Israel know that Christians, even if the whole world turns against you, Christians are going to stand with Israel. That's going to help bring forth the salvation of Israel. Christians are the best friends Israel has, and they need to know that, particularly now. One way you can do that is by going to roncan.net/protect, so we can be a blessing to Ashkelon in the name of Yeshua. Everything we do down there, we do in the name of Yeshua, and it's a powerful witness.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Ron.
Yep.
That's it for this episode of the Israel Insider Podcast. If you enjoyed this weekly podcast, please be sure to give it a review so others can find it and enjoy it. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and several other platforms, wherever you may be listening from. Be sure to follow the Israel Insider on Facebook, and there's a way there to sign up for our daily email to get the inside scoop on happenings in the Holy Land. Thanks again for joining us. See you next week.